Muscat Airport. There is a weather front just gradually pushing its way northwards through Thursday. It's a warm front bringing milder air across the south.